Let's be honest, guys. Collecting has gotten pretty lucrative over the years, especially when it comes to collecting video games. I don't know what it is, but they have been popping off as of recently. And because of that, everyone gets very excited and very angry at the prices of retro video games. But what if I were to tell you that there is a good way and a cheap way to collect some of these games? And what if I were to tell you that almost every single system that you know has a way to get them, and that you can get many of them? I'm talking 10s, 20s, even hundreds for very cheap. It just depends on what game and what system you're buying for. And today's topic is the PlayStation, the PS1, aka the premier pioneer of 3D gaming on consoles. Now, I know you can see a bunch of games that are very expensive, like Castlevania Symphony of the Night or Parappa the Rapper, but don't believe the hype, because guess what? There are plenty, and I mean plenty, of great, fun, amazing, generation-defining games on the PS1. And today, I'm gonna get you started with your first 10 games on the PlayStation. Now, all these games will be cheap. I'm gonna try to keep it under $40, and most of them will probably be under $20 to get. So don't worry about the price. This is about getting new people into collecting games. And hey, if you're a person who emulates, you might want to check out these games too. Another rule I'm setting is I'm only doing one per series, or I'm only doing a certain series. For instance, if I do Crash Bandicoot, I'm just going to tell you to get the Crash Bandicoot games, because most of the time the entire series or the entire games on that system are around the same price range, and they're still cheap. There's only a few exceptions that are different, and if they are expensive ones, usually the other games in that series is also very expensive or less expensive. It just depends on what game it is. But without further ado, let's get started. Don't believe the hype, because you're tuning into the J Blast Network as I tell you your first 10 PlayStation games to collect for. Now, don't worry, this list will have something for everyone. I'm going to try to get as much variety as I can when it comes to this list. So let's start out with the platformers, and of course, we got to talk about Crash Bandicoot. Now, having a PlayStation without Crash is like buying a Nintendo system and not buying Mario. You just got to have him there. And he has tons of great games on the system, 5 in total. Of course, I'm going to focus on the main platforming trilogy for this video. And what you get here are 3 very solid platformers that define the system. My favorite personally is Crash 3 Warped, and I love going to the future levels in that game. It's pretty awesome. It has time travel and all that jazz. But you can't go wrong with playing Crash 2, and you definitely can't go wrong with playing Crash 1. Well, it's a very hard game, just know that. All of them are very hard, but 1 in particular is a very hard game. 1 is also the most expensive, but it doesn't go above $30. And the series gets cheaper as it goes along. So by the time you get to Crash 3, I mean, I personally paid $10 for my copy, so you might be able to find the same for yourself. And that's a great deal for platformers as solid as these. Next up, I gotta put my main man Spyro on. If you know me and you've seen some of the videos on this channel, you know that I love Spyro, and Spyro is personally my favorite PS1 platformer, specifically Spyro 2. But again, you can't go wrong with any of the Spyro games. They're all awesome, but 2 and 3 in particular are awesomer. Now, these games are extremely cheap, and I think once again, Spyro 1 is a little bit more expensive than the rest of them, but it really isn't that bad. In fact, I think at the most, these games go for like $20, $25 complete. That's not that bad. That's very good. I'm talking about going to stores, I'm talking about going on eBay, wherever you're gonna buy them, you're gonna be okay. And these games are awesome. Instead of being a linear platformer like Crash, they're more open. Think of like Mario 64, except it has a little bit more objectives than Mario 64, has more mini games. And Spyro, he's kind of a cooler character than Mario, I'm just saying. And the levels, oh my god, the levels are amazing. The skyboxes are amazing. It really gives off this fantasy vibe, and especially in 2 and 3, where every level is a completely different theme, you really get a sense of adventure when exploring these worlds. I mean, you won't even be worried about the objectives, you'll just be exploring the worlds. That's what I did when I was a kid, and that's what I still do now. So if you want a platformer in the style of Collectathon on the PlayStation, you definitely cannot go wrong with Spyro the Dragon. Moving on to racing games, you gotta pick up Gran Turismo. Either Gran Turismo 1 or Gran Turismo 2, but mostly 2, because 2 has so much more content than 1. You really can't go wrong with it. I mean, it was a solid simulation racer back in the day. It popularized them. And for a racing game, it set the standard. I want to let you guys know something. Before Gran Turismo, there weren't many racing games with a lot of tracks. Some racing games had the gall to release with 1 track with a couple of variations. Some only released with 3. Gran Turismo had like 30, 15 in the first game, I think, and 30 something in the second game, probably more than that. And it had hella cars because it had this simulation mode where you had to get your license in order to get better cars and race and continue doing that loop over and over again. It was really cool. It had a whole campaign, and it pushed these other racers to do a lot better when it comes to their console ports and their content, because good lord, they needed it. But I'm not trying to make this a comparison video. I'm really just trying to tell you that Gran Turismo is awesome, and you can get both games. That's right, both games, probably both for under $15. That is insane for a game with as much content as this. I'm telling you, PlayStation games are slept on, and it's time for y'all to wake up. I'm waking you up. You know, you can't mention driving games on the PlayStation if you also don't mention Twisted Metal. Now, I've covered these games on the channel, and you guys really love those videos, so there's not much I can really say here that I've already said there. Just know it's some awesome car combat racing game with some crazy characters like freaking Sweet Tooth and Axel, and it's rad as heck, and it's also hard as heck. Pretty damn hard, especially the first two games. Now, I'm gonna warn you, you might just want to get 1, 2, 4, Small Brawl, and skip 3. I'm just playing. You can try out 3, but if you watch my latest video, you know that 3 has a lot of issues. They are a little bit more pricey. If you're gonna get them all, it's gonna run you a very high price, but most of them really don't go over that $30 range complete. Some of them will go a little bit higher. If you get the long box for Twisted Metal 1, you're definitely gonna be paying a lot more money for that, but just the disc, they are pretty cheap, except for Small Brawl. Small Brawl is a little bit more expensive now, but nothing that would break the bank. Definitely pick up a Twisted Metal game. If you're gonna pick up one, if you only had to get one, you gotta get Twisted Metal 2. I know some of you out there are very adventurous, and this is where Tomb Raider is going to come in. Now, Tomb Raider is an all-time classic, and it wasn't exclusive to PlayStation first, but 2 and 3 specifically are exclusive to PlayStation, and it might as well be an exclusive PS1 franchise with how many games came out on that system, only for that system in the first place. Because if you get this on the PlayStation, you get a total of 5 games. Now, don't worry about Tomb Raider Chronicles. Don't even touch that one right now. But the first 4 games are absolutely solid, and they are extremely cheap, guys. Extremely cheap. I'm talking about, I got the first 4 games for like $20 altogether. Yes, I'm not playing. They were that cheap. They were that freaking cheap, and they're awesome. They're full of content. The level design is pretty hard, but it's pretty solid. You're raiding tombs, looking at Lara Croft. She's awesome. She's a badass. You're shooting freaking tigers and gorillas and sometimes humans as you raid these freaking tombs, and you're going through some crazy locations like Colosseums, the Great Wall of China, freaking Venice in the second game. It is an amazing experience, and you also get to run around Laura's house and she talks to you and gives tutorials and lock that butler in the fridge if you're an asshole. I don't do that to him. He's a cool guy. But you can't go wrong with Tomb Raider, and again, they're extremely cheap, so you can get this high quality adventure without breaking the bank. Now it's time for the big boys, the RPGs, and you cannot, and I mean it, I know I've been saying this a lot, but you really cannot talk about the PlayStation without talking about Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8, and Final Fantasy 9 are all superb RPGs that really defined the genre back then. Now I'm gonna go with Final Fantasy 7 because I really like that game, but honestly, whichever one you play first might just be your favorite. It doesn't have to be 7, it can be 8 or it can be 9. And they're all great games with great stories, great action, summons, angsty teenagers, evil dystopian military corporations ready to kill you, and long-haired overpowered villains ready to wipe you off the map in one hit. That's what all the RPGs are about. And for the most part, these are very cheap. Final Fantasy 7 does run you up a little bit more money. It's about $30. It's similar to the Crash Bandicoot situation. The other two are extremely cheap. So hey, pick what you want and roll with it. Just like Cloud rolls with his motorcycle. Now here's a game that's a little bit on the expensive side, but I've seen the price vary between cheap and expensive. It just depends, man. It just depends on the time. But you could probably get this game for like 30 bucks. And I've seen this go for $10 in working condition. And that game is the Westward Bound Wild Arms. Wild Arms was one of the first RPGs on the PlayStation, and it was one of the most unique considering it took place in the Wild West. It's told like one of those Wild West stories too, except with alien demon robots trying to kill the cowboys. Yeah, the story gets pretty crazy. But the main gimmick of this game is the arms system. And each character has their arms system. And each character also has their own story. In fact, you start this game out with the characters individually and you have to travel to meet the other characters in order to recruit them. And it's pretty cool how the story connects and how the battle system is. It's definitely different from how Final Fantasy plays because of that system. Each character has their own unique abilities too, which helps differentiate them, and they each have a different way of upgrading them. I don't want to spoil too much because you really got to play the game to find out how it works yourself and to get lost in its world. But man, Wild Arms was worth every single penny. Now we're on the fighting games, and this is where Tekken comes in. Now you really can't go wrong with Tekken 2 or 3, but Tekken 1 is very rough for one of the early fighting games, but compared to the early fighting games that came out around it on the PlayStation, it probably was the best. It's still an interesting thing to go back to, but you definitely want to get 2 or 3, especially for their stories. Now 2 can be pretty dark, but it adds to its atmosphere, and that's what kind of made Tekken cool back in the day. But 3 was where it was at. We had my boy Jin Kazama, Eddie Gordo, Hao Rang, Sao Yu, just a whole bunch of cool cast members. And Jin Kazama, he's just one of the greatest fighting game protagonists of all time. It's a 3D fighter, but it's one of the originators of the 3D fighting genre, and man, the gameplay is awesome, especially in 3 where you can finally sidestep, which enhanced the gameplay a lot because holy crap, you're gonna notice that after playing Tekken 2. You can't go wrong with Tekken 3, and hey, I have a video on the channel talking about Tekken 3, so if you want to check that out, go ahead and check it out to learn more about the game. And of course, all of them are very cheap. I think each of them can be about 15 bucks each. Maybe Tekken 1 is a little bit more expensive because of that long box format, and that's what you got to understand, guys, that the long box format games are gonna be more expensive to buy because they were the rare variants of those PlayStation games. But if you get the disc alone, it shouldn't be that expensive, and you can't go wrong with Tekken 3. Ah, yes, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. This is one of my favorite franchises of all time, man. Like, I was freaking infatuated with skateboarding back in the day, and these were the games they brought up. Well, not these specific games. I played more of the Underground 2, American Wasteland, but hey, I still played these back then too, and they were awesome games, especially Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. And hey, look, in Pro Skater 2, you can create your own character, you can create your own park, so you can essentially create your own career. And as you can see in the footage, you can play as freaking Spider-Man. Isn't that awesome? He even has his own special moves. And I mean, the levels were amazing, like the school level, the hangar, New York, Marcel's, and the bull ring. Now you can't go wrong with Pro Skater 2 or 3 on the PlayStation 1. Even though 3 is different from its next gen console counterparts, it's still really good. Pro Skater 1 is pretty good too, but it lacks a lot of the mechanics to really combo like you can do in Pro Skater 2 and 3. And the problem with Pro Skater 4 is just that it has too many of the mechanics from the next gen version, and it was just too much for the little old PlayStation at the time. And that was also the last Tony Hawk game to come out on the PlayStation. But if you're looking for some skateboarding action, you gotta get Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, whichever one you want to get. And those games are also extremely cheap. You can probably get each of them for under $10. Now, the last game on this list may be a little controversial, but I always want to show a little bit of love to the sports titles. Now, I know a lot of people look at sports titles and games, ignore them, and see them as a copy and paste of the same thing over and over again. But guys, back in the day, sports games were really good, and Sony had their own sports games and sports lineup. The best one, well, one of their best ones, was NFL Gameday, and that's the game I'm talking about right now. And the NFL Gameday series is really cheap. It's really cheap, and that's because it's a sports sports game. A lot of sports games are very cheap, but that doesn't mean the quality isn't there and the content isn't there. You have a whole play editor, you can play different seasons, you have a general manager mode, and you have a training mode. And this is all in NFL Gameday 2000. That's the one I picked up. Now, everything after 2000 did add little things here and there, but it wasn't that big or significant to change the game, as at that time they're moving on to the PlayStation 2. So if you want to get anything, I would say get 2000 and after. If you want to get it before 2000, they're still very good games, but just know that some of them aren't even in 3D and they do lack some of the features that appear in NFL Gameday 2000. Otherwise, you can't go wrong with NFL Gameday, especially if you're a football fan.
Marino sets up to throw on second down.
I'm putting an extra game on here because I love you guys so much, and that game is Unjammer Lammy. Guys, I really wanted to put Parappa the Rapper on here. Parappa the Rapper is an expensive game. With the disc alone, it can be worth about $80. Incomplete, it goes in the hundreds. But Unjammer Lammy, well, it's not cheap, but it is at a decent price range. I got a complete copy myself for $30, but it's gone up a little bit. But you can still get the disc for around $40, and here you have an absolutely solid rhythm game, man. I mean, it is fun, it's energetic, it's wacky, it has that Parappa feel, and you can play as Parappa in the game, you can unlock him. But Lammy is her own character, she's cool and she's rocking her guitar, and she's in all different scenarios as she tries to make it to her concert. Yes, all of this stuff that happens in this game happens a few minutes before she gets to her concert. That's the whole premise of the game. It's really funny, it's really cool, and you know you gotta leave it to Lammy to give you a great rhythm game.
Casino, it's all in the mind.
Yeah, that's right. My guitar's in my mind. Leave it to Lemmy.
As you can see, there are many great PlayStation games you can still pick up today for cheap prices. And this was only a small selection of that. Now, I do plan on doing more videos on collecting PlayStation games, more sets of 10. I actually originally planned this to be 30 PS1 games, but that was a little too much for the video. We'd probably be here for a freaking hour doing that, and I didn't want to calculate all that into one video. So it's best to split the content up. So if you didn't see some game that you like or you know it's cheap, just know they're probably going to be in the top 30 list, and they're definitely going to be in the next PS1 games video. There's also going to be videos like this for every other system. I plan on doing this for every system from NES all the way up to the Nintendo Wii, the PS3, and the Xbox 360, because I consider all that retro right now. So stay tuned, because there's going to be a ton in store for the collecting side of this channel, and I cannot wait to get to those videos. If you guys will let me know what you thought of this list in the comments, and what games did you find for the PS1, and what games do you have on your PS1 that you enjoy playing. Let me know out in the comments below, because it's so great to talk about this system. I love talking about the system because you always find so much variety in what people talk about, because the PlayStation just had that much reach at that many games. But with that being said, this is a J Blast Network signing out, and don't forget, you better believe, baby. Oh yeah.